What's up guys, Chief here. Today we have another video where we learn how to play Starcraft 2, and in particular we're going to learn about Protoss build order called the 3-gate Robo. So this is the video where we learn about how to transition into the mid-game and late game out of the 3-gate Robo opening. So you can get this to this point with either build that I discussed in my other videos. You can do the Mothership Core opening, or you can do the Zealot Stalker Sentry opening. It doesn't matter, both are going to transition the same way. And there's a couple basic paths that I want you guys to think about, and these are kind of decisions that you need to make in the game that are going to change. Every game you play, you're going to make a different decision for a different reason. Hopefully because you're scouting your opponent and you want to counter what they're doing, or you're making a decision because you know you can get away with it based on what they're doing. So that's the end game, is you want to be able to understand that you can do these things and there's a reason why you can do what you're doing. So if we go ahead and jump right back into the game we had the other day, where I was showing you guys, okay, here's the build order. You get up to your 3 gateways, you get your Robo, you've started your Observer, and we're right about here. So the Observer is about to pop out. We've warped in 2 sets of units here. We're about to warp in our 3rd. Let's look at our warp gate cooldown. Coming up here, warp in our 3rd set of units. Now this is the point where we're starting to get up quite a bit of minerals. We kind of need to make a decision now. Do we want to expand? Do we want to make up some kind of an attack? Do we want to pressure our opponent and try to contain them? What do we want to do? So what I would suggest doing, guys, is using this first Observer here. As you can see, I have it rallied all the way over right to my opponent's front. Now once that Observer gets there, you can use it to scout around. Usually it's pretty safe at this point in the game to run your Observer right, face check things in their base to try to see what they're doing. Now once you get an idea of what they're doing, you can start to make these different decisions I was talking about earlier. So I've made a nice little visual aid, best kind of aids, visual, right here for you guys. So one of the 2 major decisions that you're going to make is whether you want to attack or do you want to expand right now. In this video, we're going to talk about just kind of an early aggression style of play and attack-focused style of play from this point of the game onward, to try to end the game with some early aggression, do a bit of an attack, and just get and establish a nice early lead. So there's a couple ways you can do that, and those 2 would be 1 base all-in, which I would not personally recommend, but we'll talk about it. Or you can kind of expand, but still focus on aggression. Now, these, again, are two possibilities. They're not the only 2 possibilities by far, but they're 2 that I think, in my experience, are good to know and can work out really well for you. So, if you decide to do a 1 base all-in, you can end the game really, really fast. You know, sub 10 minutes sometimes. And if you can't, what you need to do is do a ton of damage to your opponent, both economically and get a really nice unit advantage moving towards the end of the game. So he's basically so far behind, you're going to win by default. So if this is something you want to do, a 1 base all-in, something like that, it's kind of like almost like playing a 4-gate. What you want to do is just make sure to keep from your first robotics bay. We'll get right back into the little game here. There we go. Nope, this one. Once this Observer finishes, you want to continue queuing out Immortals. These Immortals are going to be really, really, really nice for your aggressive push. They do a ton of damage to armored units like Roaches, Marauders, Stalkers, a lot of really popular units for your enemy to have at this point in the game. And they're also doing a ton of damage to buildings. So if you get a couple Immortals out, what I usually do personally is I wait for like 2 Immortals, and once that 2nd Immortal gets to the field, that's when I make a nice big push. Try to do a ton of damage. Now I have my forward pylon coming up here, so I'm going to start warping in units, and my Immortals are still just rallied right up here to get to the enemy base to apply some pressure. Now you're going to want to use your Chrono Boost, most likely on your robotics facility. That's again to get those robotics facility units out, like your Immortals in this case, so you can get to the field faster, because that's kind of what you're waiting for here. You're waiting on that 2nd Immortal, and you're going to push with that and see what you can do. So that would be, if I was going to do a 1 base all-in sort of play, that's what I would do. Wait for your 2nd Immortal, keep your warp gates on cooldown, bring in all your warp gate units, maybe focus focus a little bit harder on the sentry units because you're using a lot of minerals for those immortals. You just want to make sure you can make those immortals and do a push with that, see what you can do. Now alternatively, you can expand with aggression. Now this is what I favor in an average game. If you're going to try to plan on doing something going into a game completely blind, I would try to plan on doing this build. So to do this, you're still going to use all your warp-ins on cooldown. You don't really want to cut your warp-ins, but you're going to favor a lot of sentries in the beginning. Your first like 2 or 3 sets of warp-ins, you want to favor sentries, and the reason for this is because sentries only cost 50 minerals. So you're using up your gas, and you're also storing some extra minerals which you can use to throw down a nexus back at home. So if we go back into the game, go faster here. I've started an immortal. You still want to make your immortals. And I'm throwing down a nexus here. Come on. Waiting for 400. There we go. Throwing down the nexus. My first immortal is about to pop out. I'm still warping in units. I have an okay force of gateway units here. Do I have any more back home? No, I don't. But this is about 7 minutes and 30 seconds on the game clock. So we have a little bit of a reasonably timed expansion. But we also have a really nice aggressive push. We have the observer out. He's here. We can use that to scout our enemies, so we know, okay, I need to go back and defend. I need to bring these units back, or I'm okay to push. So it's a little bit safer of a style. And if it doesn't work, or you go up there and you see that there's like 5 siege tanks, or widow mines everywhere, or something where you just like, it's not worth attacking. He's got a planetary, something along those lines. You can pull back, and you're still okay. You have this economic fallback, so to speak. So this is what I would prefer to do. Something like this. And I'll skip back to my graphic here. Come on. There we go. And the whole goal with this kind of a thing is to establish an early lead. You don't need to kill your opponent. You don't need to win the game right here. And that's kind of what happens when you do this one base all-in sort of style. You really need to do either a ton of damage or you need to win right now. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind and you're eventually probably going to lose. So with this style right here, and again, I'm just going to highlight this just like this for you guys and leave it kind of here, because this is what I would recommend you guys to learn and try to do on a regular basis, is to do this kind of a style where you push out, you do some light aggression, but you're not committed to it. You're establishing an early lead in some way or another with your attack, whether it be taking out a lot of workers or taking out a base even, and then you can use that early lead to just continue the rest of the game however you want. Now, I mentioned that this build safely punishes greedy or tech-heavy openings. I'll get into that in a second. The one negative side of this kind of opening, and you guys may want to consider this if you are a newer player, is that it requires a high level of multitasking and it requires a lot of APM or actions per minute. Basically, you need to be able to do a lot of things at once with Protoss. You need to be able to understand, okay, at some point I probably should throw down a forge. At some point I probably want to go to Colossi. At some point I need to add more gateways. I need to make sure my probes are going into my second base. A lot of things that you need to be doing while at the same time you're attacking. You're attacking your opponent. So if you can't handle a lot of that stuff at once, then you may not want to focus on this, and you might want to resort to kind of an all-in sort of push instead on one base. Not to say that you can't do it. Not to say that you can't play like this if you're not comfortable. So we'll just see kind of what happens. I don't really remember. I'm kind of grabbing my expansion, putting up some forward pylons. My immortal's coming, so I pushed pretty early. He's way back here. That's okay. It's a very easy AI. I'd like to say that I scouted and knew that I had a window of opportunity, but I just blindly kind of pushed in here. That's okay. Now we're doing a lot of damage. We've got our observer. This is a nice little thing to do. You can put your observer up here so you know while you're attacking this natural here what I'm looking for is where I want to force field. If I see units starting to come down out of this base, I'm going to force field this ramp and block them all off. That's something that's really helpful to do, and it's just going to be dependent on your map. And I think I actually do try to do that here. Again, in this kind of a match, it doesn't really matter what you do. It's a very easy AI. That was a brilliant force field. Brilliant. I tried. So, if we're talking about this game in particular, and this style opening in particular, if you get to a point like this, I mentioned we're establishing an early lead. We don't need to win. We don't need to kill our opponent. If we get to a situation like this, we've killed a ton of workers and lost no units. We've got an early lead. He's way behind on economy. We can back off right now if we want. We don't have to push in here. If we come up again and there's a siege tank sitting here, another siege tank sitting here, we don't have to go in this base. We can decide, okay, I want to take this out and leave. Just leave. Or back off a little bit, contain him in his base, go back home, work on your secondary base here because you know that you're a base ahead of him. You've established a lead. That's really good, and that's something that you want to try to do. You do not need to force the issue and push into something that's just going to end up costing you that lead that you've just established. So that's something that you should try to learn to recognize and learn to appreciate that at this point, okay, I've made a lead, great. Now I can leave. So if we go back to our little graphic here, this build, I say it's great because it can punish greedy or tech-heavy openings. Now this is pretty self-explanatory, but there's one thing I want to mention to you guys. Now I quickly find the map I want to show you. On the ladder, there's a lot of maps. Okay, here we go. There's a lot of maps like this. Oh my gosh. Focus. Okay. No, we don't care about that picture. So Secret Spring is a map that has your main right here if you're spawning in this position. Your front ramp is here. And your natural expansion is actually behind your main base, nice and tucked away. There's no rocks to break through. You can't sneak in the back entrance. The only thing that's really going to do damage is air units, which are pretty easy to defend at early points in the game. So this is a map that I would say favors a fast expansion or an early expansion. Another example would be this map. Same thing. Your front ramp is here. We don't care about this picture. Kind of a cool picture. Your front ramp is here. You have a nice free expansion back here to take, and that's going to encourage players to take that early expansion. Now, that's great. All we care about is that going into the map, we see that we're fighting somebody on one of those two maps or a similar situation where we're like, okay, this map favors fast expanding. We know that if we open with something like this, we have a really good opportunity right here because they're at the same point that we're pushing with this kind of an attack. They're just saturating their second base depending on how they open, and they're going to be weak. They're not going to have very much defense. So that's what this means, is if they go for a really fast expansion, more than likely you're going to have a better army than they will at that point in the game. They're going to be weak. You're going to be strong. You should attack. Might work for you, might not. So this is kind of just what I want you guys to think about. And again, you can do a one base all in if you'd like. I wouldn't recommend it. It might be, it's certainly easier. But if you do want to play this style, you might be better off doing a 4-gate opening. And I can go over another video with that kind of a build order. It's just a little bit stronger. But for now, guys, we're just going to leave it like that. And in my next video, I'm going to talk about this branch of your transitions, where you could do something more tech focused, more economy focused, instead of this this nice aggressive attack filled opening. So I think that's all I need to say right there. If you guys have any other questions at all about this kind of stuff, please leave me a comment. I'd love to help out. And again, we're going to go through more build orders and transitions in my next video. These are just a couple ideas. These are not the only things you can do. And again, the most important thing is to make sure you're scouting your opponent and making decisions based on what you see. And that's going to be something that I'd like to cover later at a later date also. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Please hit subscribe, like, follow, check me out on Twitch, whatever you want to do. That'd be great. Otherwise, I'll link some other of my videos over here if you want to check those out. I'm going to try to make a lot of different tutorials for different aspects of StarCraft 2. All right, guys, have a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.